You are sitting in a darkened office at 2:47 a.m., watching a classified intelligence feed scroll across your screen. The kind of access you're not supposed to have. The kind of information that arrives with a read receipt and a digital signature that cannot be unsent. Your coffee has gone cold 3 hours ago. You see the pattern first, then you see the date stamp, then you see the location, Wuhan, then you see the word that changes everything, fungal. My name is Donald Rogers. I'm an infectious disease analyst, and I had 7 days before the world stopped believing in coincidence.
The report landed in my inbox at 2:33 a.m., encrypted, flagged for senior staff. Only a respiratory fungal outbreak in Wuhan labs, preliminary strain markers. Suggesting parasitic neurotoxicity, 3 researchers hospitalized, protocol. O-negative activated maximum secrecy, and then the memo, the one that told me everything. Do not share, do not discuss, do not acknowledge receipt outside secure channels. Expected containment window, 72 hours, likelihood assessment, classified. I read it twice. I called Sarah. It was 3:15 in the morning. She answered on the 4th ring, and the first thing she said was not hello. It was silence. Then, what now, Donald? Sarah was a state police captain. She knew what classified alerts meant. I told her everything, the fungal markers, the neurotoxicity, the protocol, designation, the researchers, the 72-hour window that I knew was a lie even as I read it. Fungal pathogens don't collapse in 72 hours. They incubate, they spread, they wait. She listened for 8 minutes, then she said, "You're doing the flat thing again, aren't you?" Not a question, not anymore. I had spent 3 years converting my apartment into a self-sustaining shelter. Sarah had watched every iteration, the water recycling system in the bathroom, the sealed storage room on the north wall, the seed vault, the solar panels on the balcony I'd installed without landlord approval, the ammo, the food. Calculations, she'd mocked all of it, gently at first, then less gently. She said, "You can't live the rest of your life in a flat, Donald. That's not preparation, that's paranoia, that's the president losing his mind." The president, that's what her friends called me, what everyone called me. 3 hours after that phone call, Sarah sent me a message, not in person. Not even a voice note, a text, 7 words, "I'm going to Barcelona, I'm leaving today." Her best friend's bachelorette. She'd booked it 2 months ago, she'd told me about it twice. I'd forgotten both times because I was calculating nitrogen levels in sealed water tanks and cross-referencing fungal growth vectors and doing the math that no one wanted me to do. She left at 6:47 a.m. I watched her put her suitcase in the taxi from the flat window. She didn't look up, she didn't wave, she just left. And then she got on a plane to Spain. At 7:15 a.m., I got a second classified alert, updated strain assessment. Containment probability revised down. Spread vectors now confirmed human to human. International travel recommended lockdown status. Expected timeline to critical mass 168 hours. 7 days. I had work at 9 a.m. I called in sick. I didn't go back to the office for 2 weeks. Day -7, 7:30 a.m. The flat was 847 square feet, 16th floor, north-facing. 2 bedrooms, one of which I'd converted into a sealed storage room, 1 bathroom. With a water recycling system I'd built from medical-grade filtration canisters, copper pipes, and gravity-fed collection tanks. I had already stockpiled food, 1,200 pounds of it, canned vegetables, beans, rice, protein bars, dried fruit, powdered milk, salt, 80 pounds of salt. Because salt is currency and medicine, And the one thing everyone forgets until they're dying of hyponatremia in a room full of water they can't drink. I had 300 gallons of water in sealed containers. I had medicine, antibiotics, painkillers, antifungal creams, respirator masks, N100 filters. I had solar generator with 6,000 watt-hours of battery capacity. I had seeds, heirloom. Seeds, tomatoes, lettuce, beans, onions. Enough to garden on the balcony for one season. I had ammo, 30 rounds, a handgun I'd bought through legal channels, and a baseball bat. But it wasn't enough. None of it was going to be enough, because I had to think in terms of 30 years. Not days, years. So I spent the next 7 days calculating what would kill me first. Starvation, dehydration, infection, madness, the fungal spores in the air outside. The people who would come looking for supplies when theirs ran out. Day 1, 8:00 a.m. I opened my spreadsheet, the one I'd been building for 3 years, every calorie accounted for, every gallon of water, every medical supply. Cross-referenced against infectious disease protocol I'd memorized. 1,200 pounds of food divided by 847 square feet equals 1.42 pounds per day if I ate at minimal survival calories. That was 10 months, not 30 years, not even close. I had known this. This was the exact conversation that had broken me and Sarah apart. But I had also known something else, something that the spreadsheet said but that I had never explained to her because I knew how it would sound. You don't die of starvation in 30 years of isolation. You die because the supply chain breaks. You die because water sources become contaminated. You die because the fungal spores settle into your lungs and you don't have antibiotics anymore. You die because infection finds you through a cut you didn't see. So the math wasn't about feeding myself for 30 years. The math was about keeping the systems running long enough that I could grow food, make water, maintain medical quarantine, survive the first 2 years, the critical years after that. The world either restarts or it doesn't. If it restarts, I open the door. If it doesn't, I use the seeds. I spent the entire first day recalculating the water recycling capacity. I had it wrong. The system was designed for 2 people. I had built it for 2 people, for me and Sarah, for the life I thought we were going to have. The filtration canister capacity was rated for 7,500 gallons. I was getting approximately 12 gallons per person per day if we rationed. 2 people, 24 gallons per day. That meant 312 days before I needed to replace the filters. Except Sarah was not here, and I couldn't replace the filters after the supply chains collapsed. So I spent 14 hours on the 4th floor of the apartment building's basement access tunnel finding 2 older water heaters that nobody was using anymore. I dragged them into my flat. I disassembled them. I modified the tank linings with food-grade epoxy. I created a secondary collection and storage system. By 10 p.m., I had expanded my recycled water capacity from 50 gallons standing volume to 180 gallons. I tested the pH. I tested for bacterial markers. I drank a small cup of it. It tasted like copper and desperation. It was perfect. That night my hands were bleeding from the edges of the metal piping. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. I didn't notice either of those things until I was sitting on the kitchen floor at 2 a.m., staring at the spreadsheet, looking at the number that said I might actually survive this. Day 3, 6:47 a.m. The emergency siren started at 6:47 a.m. Not car alarms, not police or ambulance. The emergency broadcast siren, the one they test on the first Wednesday of every month at noon, except this was a Tuesday at 6:47 in the morning, and this wasn't a test. I was sealing the balcony door with duct tape and plastic sheeting, medical grade. I had prepared for this specific moment. I had the materials stacked by the door. Plastic rolls, duct tape, respirator filters, a spray bottle of EPA-approved antifungal solution. The sirens lasted for 47 seconds, then they stopped, then they started again. Continuous, not the national emergency broadcast loop, just continuous screaming. From the city outside, I looked out the window. The street 16 floors below was starting to fill with people, moving, not panicking, not yet, moving like they'd received orders, like they'd been told where to go. Later I understood they had been told. Emergency broadcasts were coming through phones, reports, incomplete, conflicting, safe zones established. At stadiums, medical facilities overwhelmed, stay indoors, isolate, do not go outside. Funny how those last 3 orders kept contradicting. My flat looked down on a shopping center, not small, industrial scale, 4 anchor stores, 100 smaller retail units, a parking structure. I watched the doors open at 7:15 a.m. I watched people pour out, not in panic, in desperation. Different thing, panic is fast, desperation is thorough. By 10 a.m., the shopping center was being stripped. I could see it from my window. People carrying groceries they hadn't paid for, electronics, clothing, boxes of things that wouldn't matter in 3 days, but that they thought would matter. Today, some of them were injured. I saw blood, not much, just enough to know that the first violence had already started. By noon, the security gates were down, the store lights were off, the shopping center had been emptied. And then this was the strange part, people started going back, not to the center. They went back to their cars, back to their flats, back to their homes, like they'd realized something, like they'd remembered that supplies at a shopping center meant nothing if you couldn't leave home anymore. Sarah was in Barcelona. I thought about that. I thought about whether she had realized yet, whether she was watching the news, whether she was thinking about what I'd said 3 days ago when she'd left on that plane. I sealed the balcony door completely by 2 p.m. I triple-checked the seal. I opened one of the medical-grade respirators and held it to my face. The filters were good. They would last for 40 hours of continuous use. After that, they were inert. I had 6 of them. 40 hours multiplied by 6 was 240 hours. That was 10 days, if the spore count outside reached a level that required masks inside the flat. I had 10 days before I was breathing unfiltered air. 10 days. The emergency broadcast started at 4 p.m. I turned on the radio. I'd prepared for this too, a hand-crank emergency radio, battery backup. I adjusted the frequency to the emergency bands. Fungal pathogen of unknown origin. Respiratory transmission confirmed. Symptoms include cognitive deterioration, increased aggression and loss of impulse control and advanced infection stages. Remain indoors. Do not engage with individuals displaying infection markers. Medical facilities are currently overwhelmed. Antibiotic-resistant strains confirmed. Repeat, remain indoors. I didn't turn it off. I listened for 3 hours. The same information repeated. Refined, clarified. The number of confirmed cases updated every 30 minutes. 7 p.m., 3,400 cases, concentrated in city center. 2 adjacent suburbs showing rapid spread. 8 p.m., 8,200 cases, spread now confirmed in 3 states. 9 p.m., 22,000 cases. Hospitals requesting immediate military logistics support. 10 p.m., broadcast abruptly stops. 11 p.m., back on. New message, martial law declared, curfew established, mandatory. Testing at designated locations, quarantine protocols initiated, safe zones. Established, remain calm, government is managing the situation. I knew what that meant. I had read enough crisis management protocols. Martial law didn't mean the situation was managed. It meant the situation was unmanageable. I lay down on the kitchen floor at 11:47 p.m. I had sealed every entry point to the flat. I had checked the systems 3 times. I had eaten 1,200 calories of rationed food. I had drunk filtered water that tasted like copper. I had calculated that I was going to survive the next 10 days, and then I didn't know what would happen. Sarah was in Barcelona. I didn't know if she was alive anymore. I didn't know if the plane she'd gotten on had landed, or if something had happened at the airport, or if the protocols had changed mid-flight. I didn't have any way to contact her. No internet access, no phone signal to the outside world. I had cut everything. 30 years, that's what I'd prepared for, but I was only prepared for the isolation. I wasn't prepared for not knowing. Day 5, I stopped counting hours. I started counting systems. Water recycling operational, pH 7.2, bacterial count negligible, second tank. Filling properly, 180 gallons standing, consumption rate 8 gallons per day, system. Lifespan, 22.5 days before filters require replacement. I do not have replacement filters. Food, 1,200 pounds remaining. Caloric intake, 1,600 calories per day. Consumption rate optimal. Estimated supply duration, 300 days at current ration. Insufficient. For target timeline, begin sprouting seeds on day 15. Oxygen, I had worried about this. Stale air, carbon dioxide buildup, but the flat wasn't perfectly sealed. It was sealed enough that outside spores wouldn't enter. But oxygen still diffused through the gaps at door frames. The system held. Medication, 400 antibiotic tablets, 600 paracetamol, 200 ibuprofen, antifungal. Cream, respirator filters, 6 units at 40-hour capacity, total respiratory filter. Lifespan 240 hours, insufficient. Begin rationing on day 8. Ammo 30 rounds, unknown utility, psychological comfort, significant. Seeds 12 varieties, germination probability high in controlled conditions. Spring. Equinox 41 days away. Balcony growing season, 4 months, caloric contribution. To diet, meaningful but insufficient. Begin on schedule. Solar generator, 6,000 watt-hours capacity. Recharge rate, 600 watt-hours per sunny day. Current charge, 4,200 watt-hours. Sufficient for lighting, water system. Circulation pump, climate control in storage room. Duration, indefinite if panels remain functional. All systems operational. Isolation protocol, active, morale declining. On day 5 at 3 p.m., I heard banging from the flat below me. Not quiet, not the kind of noise that normal people make, rhythmic, fist-sized. Impacts against the ceiling, against walls, breaking, smashing. I stood in the center of my kitchen and I counted the impacts, 47 seconds, then silence. Then screaming, a woman's voice, high panicked, sustained for 12 seconds, abrupt. Stop, the kind of stop that doesn't mean the screaming ended naturally. I checked the seals on every door. I checked the respirator masks. I checked the baseball bat I had placed behind the kitchen door for a reason I had never fully articulated, even to myself. The building was a 24-story residential structure, approximately 400 units. Population estimate, 1,000 people before the outbreak. How many of them were still alive? How many were infected? How many would survive long enough to become desperate? I didn't go to the window. I had learned not to. The shopping center was visible. From the window, the city streets, the things that were happening down there, on. Day 3, I had watched a crowd move through the intersection below. Not orderly. Purposeful but confused, moving towards something they couldn't see yet, moving in the direction of the medical complex 7 blocks away. By day 4, that crowd had stopped moving. They had stayed at the medical complex. I didn't see them leave. The building went quiet again. I ate my evening ration of 400 calories, canned vegetables, bread I'd baked 3 days before the outbreak using the last flour I would bake fresh for 30 years. It was hard, it was tasteless, it was enough. I slept on the living room floor. The couch had belonged to Sarah. I couldn't sit on it without thinking about her, so I didn't. Day 7, the final day of the 168-hour window. I broke my own rule. I went to the window. I looked out at the city. The shopping center was burning, not actively. The flames were small, contained. Fires in the parking structure. Looters with torches, maybe, or fires that had started from nothing and were spreading quietly. I couldn't tell anymore. The shopping center looked like a dying animal, gutted, empty, useless. The streets below were empty. I had expected chaos. I had expected crowds. Instead, I saw absence. No cars, no people, no movement, just silence and ash, falling like snow in the middle of the day. The buildings around me were dark, not all of them. Some had lights on, upper floors mostly, people in flats like mine, sealed, waiting, or people too confused to understand what was happening, or people already infected, moving in their flats, in ways that the builders hadn't designed for. I counted the occupied units by the lights, 7 visible from my window, 7 flats with lights on, 7 other people who had also decided to stay inside. I didn't know if they were alive, or if the lights were on from automatic timers. I would never know. Sarah was in Barcelona. I had to accept that I would never see her again. That somewhere, whether she was alive or infected or already dead, she was thinking about me or not thinking about me, in a place that was 2,000 miles away and completely unreachable. The last thing she had said to me was that I was paranoid, that I was the president living in delusion. She had been wrong, but she had also been right. I was paranoid. I had spent 3 years of my life preparing for something that nobody believed would happen. I had sacrificed the relationship that mattered most to me because I thought the world was ending. The world was ending, and I was sealed in a flat and she was in Spain, and there was nothing I could do about either of those things except survive. The 168-hour window closed at 6:47 a.m. on day 8. The sirens had stopped on day 4. The broadcasts had gone silent on day 5. The emergency radio had been making static noise for the last 2 days. I didn't expect anything to change at exactly 168 hours. Crisis management timelines are not exact, they are theoretical, but the intelligence assessment had been clear. 168 hours to critical mass. 168 hours until the spread became unmanageable. 168 hours until the only survival strategy was isolation. The isolation had begun. The question that I had been avoiding was the one that would define the next 30 years. Had I been right? The systems were working, the water was cycling, the food was lasting, the air was still breathable. I was alive, but alive meant something different now. It meant existing in sealed space. It meant not knowing if the world outside was recovering or collapsing. It meant living with the fact that I had been proven right by the worst possible evidence. My colleagues at the lab had dismissed my warnings. My friends had mocked my preparation. Sarah had left for Barcelona thinking I was paranoid, and all of that dismissal, all of that mockery, was now irrelevant because the fungal outbreak had happened exactly as I had predicted it would. The only thing I had not predicted was that I would have to survive it alone. I had prepared for 30 years of survival. I had not prepared for 30 years of being the only person who had been right about the end of the world. There is a particular kind of isolation that comes with being right about something that nobody wanted to believe. My mother had said it to me once. Donald, the problem with prophets is that they get to see the future, but they don't get to change it. They just have to live with knowing what's coming while everyone else laughs. I had dismissed it at the time. That was before Sarah. That was before the lab. That was before I had spent 3 years converting my apartment into a tomb because I trusted the data more than I trusted people. The data had been correct, but I would have traded being right for not being alone. The spreadsheet didn't account for that. The systems didn't account for that. 30 years of preparation didn't account for the fact that humans are not built for absolute isolation. We are built for connection. We are built to be wrong together. We are built to survive alongside someone who thinks we're paranoid and loves us anyway. I had the supplies for 30 years, but I didn't have that. On the night of day 7, I found my phone. I had not used it since the morning Sarah left for Barcelona. There was no signal. There had been no signal since day 1. But the phone still had power. I scrolled through the photos, pictures of Sarah, pictures of the apartment we'd shared before it became a shelter, pictures of normal life, pictures of the time when being wrong about the future meant we still had one together. The phone died at 2 a.m. I didn't charge it. There was no point. I was sealed in a flat with 30 years of supplies and 0 years of human contact. And the only way out was through. I had 7 days to prepare. I used them perfectly, and the world ended anyway. The first month passed in routines. Wake check systems, ration food, filter water, tend the seeds I'd started in. Hydroponics trays on day 15, sleep, repeat. The building remained quiet after day 5. I heard nothing from below. I heard nothing from the sides. I heard nothing from above. The 7 visible occupied flats, the ones with lights on, all went dark by day 19. Either the lights failed or the people did. I would never know which. The solar generator held. The water system held. The food supply held. By day 31, the first seedlings had broken through the soil. Tomato plants, lettuce, bean sprouts, biological proof that the sealed environment could sustain growth. The outside world remained visible through the sealed window. The shopping center was completely burned out by day 12. The streets had filled with debris by day 15. By day 31, grass was growing through the cracks in the asphalt. Nature was reclaiming the city that humanity had abandoned. I thought about Sarah every day. I calculated the probability that she was alive. I estimated the likelihood that Barcelona was also overwhelmed by the outbreak. I considered the possibility that international travel had stopped before her plane landed. I considered the opposite, that she had landed safely, that Spain was handling the outbreak differently, that she was alive and sealed in a different flat in a different city, thinking about me. The math said 0.3% chance she was still alive. The mathematics of hope said, certainty. By day 31, I had to do the math again. The food supply was lasting longer than projected because I was rationing harder than I had originally calculated. 1,200 calories per day was below survival minimum for normal activity, but I wasn't doing normal activity. I was lying on the kitchen floor and checking systems and talking to myself, and that required fewer calories than I had estimated. At current consumption rate, the food would last 420 days, 14 months, and then the seeds would begin producing. The hydroponic system would generate fresh vegetables. The math said I could survive on approximately 40% fresh produce and 60% stored food once the systems matured. It worked, it was tight. It required everything to work correctly, but it worked. The water would be fine. 180 gallons standing volume, 8 gallons per day consumption. The recycling system was holding at 95% filtration efficiency. The secondary collection was working. I could survive indefinitely on recycled water. The medication would last 400 days if I continued using it conservatively. But after 400 days, if I became infected, if I was injured, if I was sick, I would be dependent on my immune system and the plants I was growing. Plants like echinacea, plants like ginger, plants like the 12 varieties of medicinal herbs I had seeds for. The math said I could survive this. The math had always said I could survive this. But the math was the only thing that had survived it with me. By day 31, I had accepted that I was alone for 30 years, or maybe forever. But that was the deal I had made when I decided to be right instead of happy. The question that arrives at 3 a.m. and never leaves is simple. Was it worth it? I spent 3 years preparing to survive something that I could not prove would happen. I sacrificed the relationship with the person I loved because I was so certain that the world was ending. And then the world ended and I was right, and I was alone, and there was no satisfaction in that rightness, because rightness doesn't matter when you are the only person left to celebrate it. The apartment is sealed, the systems are holding, the seeds are growing, and I am talking to the wall, because the wall is the only thing that will listen anymore. But here is what I would tell you if you are listening to this. There are 400 units in this building. Maybe 1,000 people lived here before the outbreak. Maybe 50 of them made it past the first week. Maybe 10 made it past the first month. I don't know. I can't know. I am sealed in a flat that I prepared for a partner who I no longer have. But I am alive. And that is worth something. It is not worth the loneliness. It is not worth the sacrifice. It is not worth any of the years that I will spend talking to myself in a sealed apartment, but it is something. It is the one thing that cannot be taken from me. I was right. And I am still here. And if you are listening to this, and you have the slightest doubt that something is coming, the smallest whisper in the back of your mind that the world you know might not last forever, then you should prepare, not for the world, for yourself. Not for the future, for the people you love, because being right doesn't matter unless you have someone to be right with. I didn't have that choice, but you do, and I am telling you, make the choice. I didn't prepare with someone, prepare for someone, prepare because love is the only system that matters more than water and seeds and medicine. Because I have all of those things, and I would trade every single one of them too. Hear Sarah's voice tell me I was paranoid one more time. This is The Last Signal. If you're new, subscribe for more long-form survival horror stories. Comment your country, join the roll call, and boost the signal. Like the video if you want part 2. because every transmission is someone's last, and someone needs to know. Stay prepared, stay sharp, stay human.